What happens in your brain when you hear the words Doomsday Weapon? Your amygdala fires, your hypothalamus tightens its grip, cortisol surges, preparing you for a threat even if that threat is thousands of kilometers away, streaking across the sky in hypersonic silence. Today, we're going to explore what happens not just in the human brain, but in geopolitical nervous systems when balance is shattered by speed, secrecy, and sheer destructive force. The Khorramshahr missile represents more than a leap in military hardware. It acts as a psychological and neurological trigger that rewires the way nations respond to threats. When a missile capable of traveling at hypersonic speeds enters the strategic landscape, it doesn't just disrupt radar systems, it disrupts cognition. At the individual level, the human brain processes threat using a tightly coordinated loop involving the amygdala, hypothalamus, and prefrontal cortex. These structures evaluate danger, initiate stress responses, and attempt to generate rational decisions. But when the perceived threat moves faster than our ability to consciously process it, the system is overwhelmed. In other words, the nervous system of a population and its leadership is challenged to function under immense pressure in extremely short time frames. This mirrors what happens in national defense protocols. Hypersonic missiles travel so fast that traditional detection and interception windows shrink from minutes to seconds. There's little time for layered human input, so militaries must depend on automated systems, artificial intelligence, and predictive algorithms. This shift from human-led response to machine-led reaction is not just tactical, it's biological. Humans evolved to respond to lions and tribal warfare, not Mach 13 missiles. The threat Khorramshahr poses goes beyond its payload. It lies in the neural disarray it introduces into the brains of those responsible for defending against it. This is why such weapons are effective even without being used. The anticipation of their possible deployment induces chronic stress at both state and societal levels, not unlike the effects of long-term anxiety on the brain. This leads to reactionary policies, rapid arms development, and sometimes even errors in judgment. The brain, under continuous high-threat signaling, can lose its capacity for long-term strategy of vulnerability as powerful as any warhead. Israel's Iron Dome is one of the most advanced missile defense systems in the world. Designed specifically to intercept short-range threats like rockets, mortars, and artillery shells. It has proven itself repeatedly in live combat scenarios by detecting and destroying incoming projectiles with remarkable accuracy. However, the emergence of a weapon like Iran's Khorramshahr ballistic missile introduces an entirely different level of challenge. The Khorramshahr is built for long-range, high-speed attacks, potentially reaching speeds above Mach 13. This level of velocity, combined with the possibility of mid-flight maneuverability, places it far outside the operational envelope of the Iron Dome. Missile defense isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Systems are built to counter specific categories of threats based on altitude, speed, and trajectory. The Iron Dome, while exceptional for what it was intended to do, does not have the radar range, tracking precision, or interception capability to handle a large, hypersonic ballistic missile descending from near-space altitudes. Even Israel's higher-tier systems such as David's Sling or Arrow 3, which are specifically built for ballistic threats, would be challenged by the Khorramshahr due to its speed, possible decoys, and sudden trajectory shifts. What this means strategically is that detection and interception must now occur in far shorter time frames and with far more precision. The reaction time for a hypersonic threat is not measured in minutes but in seconds. This demands faster sensor integration, better prediction algorithms, and a seamless human-machine interface. The mere presence of such a missile alters defense planning, requiring round-the-clock readiness and contingency thinking. When a system like Iron Dome cannot stop a new class of threat, the psychological impact can be as significant as the physical one. It exposes vulnerabilities and forces adversaries to reconsider the stability of their existing defense doctrines. The Khorramshahr missile, beyond its physical capabilities, serves as a psychological tool crafted for strategic influence. Its presence functions as a constant trigger in the minds of rival nations, activating a continuous threat perception loop. This isn't accidental. It's deliberate psychological warfare. When a missile with a 2,000-kilometer range and the potential for maneuverability is introduced into the public and military dialogue, it creates a lingering sense of uncertainty. That uncertainty becomes a stimulus that constantly activates alertness, similar to how the human brain remains in a hypervigilant state during periods of chronic stress or trauma. The weapon doesn't need to be launched to do damage. It causes disruption by its mere existence and by how it's communicated through media, intelligence briefings, and military projections. This strategy mirrors how the brain responds to unpredictable threats. When danger is unpredictable and uncontrollable, the stress response intensifies. The Khorramshahr's design emphasizes unpredictability, its speed, its range, and especially its rumored capability to change trajectory mid-flight. Such features reduce the sense of control on the part of the defender, leading to a heightened and prolonged stress response in strategic leadership circles. The decision-making environment becomes charged with fear-based urgency rather than calm, calculated analysis. As a result, resources may be allocated under duress, decisions made prematurely, and public sentiment manipulated either toward panic or demand for retaliation. The psychological impact ripples from military analysts to policymakers to civilians. It's a ripple that can destabilize internal confidence and erode the psychological edge that strong defense systems typically provide. This is the power of perception manipulation through military signaling. The Khorramshahr missile becomes not just a weapon of war, but a tool of mind games, targeting not cities, but the neural architecture of national defense consciousness. Modern missile warfare increasingly relies on the concept of overwhelming a defense system through sheer volume and complexity, a tactic known as saturation. This is not just a physical strategy, but a neurological one as well, because even the most advanced systems, both technological and human, have limits to what they can process under extreme time pressure. The Khorramshahr missile, particularly when deployed in salvos or alongside decoys, presents a scenario where traditional interception strategies may fail simply due to cognitive and computational overload. Defense systems, like the brain, are optimized for identifying patterns and responding to a manageable number of inputs. When those inputs become excessive, performance degrades rapidly. In neuroscience, this is comparable to sensory flooding. When too much information enters the system too quickly, decision-making slows down or becomes error-prone. This same principle applies to air defense networks. If multiple missiles are launched simultaneously, or if decoys are introduced that mimic real threats, the detection, identification, and interception systems must operate at their absolute limits. Any delay, even by a few seconds, can mean the difference between neutralizing a threat and suffering an impact. This vulnerability is precisely what modern offensive missile strategies are designed to exploit. By creating the conditions for saturation, the attacker doesn't just aim to break through defenses physically, but to collapse the mental and computational infrastructure that supports them. Operators must make rapid, fire decisions, often with incomplete data, while automated systems race to lock onto fast, moving targets that may or may not be real. The Khorramshahr missile, with its speed and potential for evasive maneuvers, fits perfectly into this disruptive model. It is designed not merely to destroy targets, but to stress, confuse, and potentially paralyze the very systems built to defend against it, turning speed and complexity into strategic weapons. The true strategic power of a missile like Khorramshahr lies not just in its physical capabilities, but in the perception it creates. In modern conflict, how a weapon is perceived often outweighs what it can actually do. The unveiling of a long-range, high-speed missile capable of maneuvering during flight sends a message that shifts calculations on all sides, not through impact but through implication. When a missile is introduced with the potential to evade defense systems and reach deep into enemy territory, it changes how opponents think, plan, and respond, even before a single launch occurs. This psychological effect is central to its value. Perception shapes policy, influences defense budgets, and alters public sentiment. Once a missile like Khorramshahr enters the dialogue, nations begin to adapt their strategies in response to its presence. They increase surveillance, adjust missile defense postures, hold emergency drills, and invest in countermeasures that may or may not be effective. All of these actions are driven by the belief that such a weapon could be used, rather than evidence that it will. This belief becomes its own kind of weapon, operating in the minds of adversaries, constantly influencing behavior and decision-making. This is similar to how anticipation of danger affects the human brain. The threat doesn't have to be immediate to be real, it just needs to feel imminent. That sensation keeps neural circuits active and stress levels elevated, leading to long-term cognitive strain. In national defense, this translates into heightened alert status, political tension, and potential overreactions. By exploiting perception, a missile like Khorramshahr destabilizes more than battlefields. It distorts the psychological equilibrium that nations depend on to make rational, measured choices. In this way, perception becomes not only a tactical advantage, but a cornerstone of modern deterrence. When facing advanced threats like the Khorramshahr missile, the most critical factor isn't just technological readiness, it's the ability to maintain psychological and strategic composure under extreme pressure. In both neuroscience and defense, the capacity to stay calm in the face of imminent danger determines whether the system adapts or collapses. Hypersonic weapons create scenarios where reaction time is minimal, uncertainty is high, and the consequences of misjudgment are enormous. In these moments, a clear and composed mindset is as vital as radar or interceptor systems. Just as the human brain under chronic stress can become reactive, irrational, and prone to error, national defense systems can also lose coherence if driven by panic or fear-based urgency. Effective response to such threats requires more than fast computers or sophisticated tracking systems. It demands land strategies, deeply trained operators, and a culture of disciplined focus. Calm under fire is not an emotional state, but a trained neurological pattern that resists the pull of chaos. Leaders and analysts must simulate these high-pressure conditions repeatedly so that when the real situation arises, they default to clarity rather than confusion. Much like the neuroscience behind performance in athletes or surgeons, success under pressure is built long before the moment of crisis through repetition, feedback, and stress conditioning. The Khorramshahr missile is engineered to fracture timelines, shorten decision windows, and exploit unprepared minds, but its threat becomes manageable if the responding system, human and technological, has been hardened against panic. This resilience doesn't come from optimism or hope. It comes from structure, rehearsal, and the relentless cultivation of focused, rational behavior. In the end, calm is not weakness, it is control. And in a world of hypersonic velocity and strategic deception, control is the most powerful defense a nation or an individual can possess.